Welcome to This Explainer. Now you know, most criminals go to absolute extremes to cover their tracks, right? They operate in the shadows, scrubbing away any tiny piece of evidence that could ever tie them to a crime. But today, we're looking at a guy who did the exact opposite. We're diving into the incredibly disturbing case of Paul DeWise. Over the course of months, this man relentlessly filmed his own rage, his paranoia, and his deeply predatory behavior. Behavior that ultimately culminated in a midnight execution. In his absolute obsession with documenting his life, he literally directed his own downfall.
Just take a second and let those words actually sink in. I'm a killer man. I love to kill. That's not some cheesy line from a Hollywood script. That is a real, literal text message sent by Paul DeWise. And honestly, it perfectly sets the stage for the terrifying psychological reality of the man we're investigating today. He wasn't just some angry ex. He was a guy harboring this deeply violent fantasy, and he was slowly, methodically bringing it into reality, all while keeping his cameras rolling. Okay, I want you to put yourself right in the shoes of Audie Butler. It's January 7th, 2018. It's a freezing cold morning in Bozeman, Montana. Audie has just spent the night at a friend's house, and the second she gets back to her own home, she knows something is terribly, terribly wrong. The back door is completely smashed in, and leading right up to that splintered door, distinct, heavy boot prints stamped right into the fresh overnight snow. So Audie bravely walks inside, calling out for her two roommates, having absolutely no idea about the complete horror that's waiting for her up on the second floor.
A gruesome discovery. So let's get into the grim reality of what investigators walked into that morning. The scene waiting for the Belgrade police was just devastating. Audie found one of her roommates, 32-year-old Ashley Van Hemert, lying in a pool of blood on her bedroom floor. She was in critical condition with multiple gunshot wounds. Guys, one of those bullets was literally lodged in her brain. And then, in the room right across the hall, lay 35-year-old Lauren DeWise. Tragically, Lauren was already gone. She'd suffered 4 fatal gunshot wounds to her head, shoulder, and torso. Now, Audie had immediately bolted from the house to call 911, terrified the shooter was still lurking inside, and she didn't hesitate for a second to give police a suspect, Lauren's estranged husband, Paul DeWise. But here's the twist. When police brought Paul in, he seemed to have an ironclad alibi. He swore he was home all night and had only left for a quick beer run at exactly 12:34 a.m. The perfect family facade.
To even wrap our heads around how things got to this horrific morning, we gotta rewind a bit. We need to look at the massive gap between Paul's public persona and his truly dark private reality. To the outside world, the illusion was flawless. Paul and Lauren had moved out to Montana in late 2017 looking for a fresh start. Lauren was absolutely thriving, a rising star who quickly landed a promotion to bank manager. Meanwhile, Paul played the ultimate supportive stay-at-home dad. He took care of their young daughter, who they called Baby, plus his 2 teenagers from a previous marriage, Natalie and Joe. But behind closed doors, the reality was incredibly toxic. Paul was deeply, profoundly resentful of Lauren's success. He basically used his constant vlogging, which was supposedly just to capture, happy family memories, to twist the narrative and paint himself as this neglected victim. He'd complain Lauren didn't care about him, completely ignoring the fact that his own cameras were secretly documenting his paranoid, controlling, and predatory behavior.
Let's walk through the tense, steady escalation of Paul's unhinged paranoia over the course of about 6 months. Because violence like this, it doesn't just spring out of nowhere. If we chronologically map out his descent, the pattern is glaring. In July 2017, Paul gets into this altercation on a nature trail over barking dogs of all things, and literally stabs a man. And of course, Paul filmed the aftermath, claiming self-defense to cover up his own explosive rage. Fast forward to the fall, and he points a gun at an Airbnb guest staying in their home during some bizarre argument. The tension in that house was absolutely boiling over. Finally, by November, Lauren had just had enough of the escalating abuse. Friends even noted she had visible bruises she was trying to hide, so she packed up and moved into Audie's house. And how does Paul react? On December 20th, he recruits his 15-year-old son, Joe, to help him slap GPS tracking devices right onto Lauren's car. He wasn't just angry, he was actively hunting her. Around this time, he's just bombarding Lauren with these pathetic, highly manipulative text messages, including this incredibly terrifying admission. "I am obsessed with you and our marriage. You have pushed me over the edge." He was constantly showing up at her work, waiting outside bars, creeping around taking photos of her friends' houses in the dead of night. But you know what the most chilling detail is? Because Paul was so obsessed with recording everything, he actually accidentally captured audio of his own deadly threats. In one clip, you can literally hear him telling Lauren, "I am going to kill you, you gotta die." His obsession wasn't just a phase anymore, it was turning fully lethal. So now we find ourselves back on that freezing night of January 6th. Let's break down Paul's terrifyingly calculated moves here. Earlier that evening, Lauren sent Paul a text saying she wasn't going to go to church with him the next day. And apparently, that was the final straw. Paul wakes up his 15-year-old son Joe, forces him to ditch his phone, and makes him get in the car. He throws on a mask and gloves, and then, in a move that is just sickening, he hands a set of gloves and a mask, along with a pistol, to his teenage son. They drive over to Audie's house, where Paul completely kicks in the back door. He makes Joe wait downstairs while he marches upstairs and mercilessly executes Lauren and shoots Ashley. And then comes step 4. Paul drives straight to a town pump convenience store to buy a 6-pack of beer at exactly 12:34 a.m. Why? Because he knew the store's security cameras would catch him on tape, handing him what he seriously thought was the perfect alibi. Paul really thought he'd outsmarted the whole system. But ironically, his absolute obsession with the camera, it became the very trap that caught him. Investigators didn't even have to look very far to blow his alibi wide open. They literally just had to scroll through his own devices. Remember those heavy boot prints in the snow outside the crime scene? Well, police didn't even need to physically find the boots right away, because Paul had already filmed his son Joe wearing boots with that exact specific tread pattern in his own home vlogs. Then police uncovered those accidental audio recordings of Paul explicitly threatening to kill Lauren. They pulled his internet search history, which naturally showed him Googling revenge laws and looking up ways to track his wife. And finally, under the crushing weight of the evidence, 15-year-old Joe broke down. He confessed the whole thing to detectives, detailing exactly how his father forced him into the house and then actively coached him and his sister Natalie on what lies to tell the cops. But if you're looking for the absolute rock bottom of this entire tragedy, it actually happens after Paul's arrest. Get this. On a recorded jailhouse phone call, Paul is talking to his daughter Natalie, and he actually asks her to convince his own 15-year-old son Joe to turn himself in and confess to being the one who shot Lauren and Ashley. And his reasoning? Well, since Joe was a minor, he'd only spend a little while in jail, and then Paul's own life would be normal again. Let that sink in. He was 100% willing to sacrifice his own teenage kid just to dodge the consequences of his own brutal actions.
Thankfully, the jury saw right through the entire facade. Paul DeWise was found guilty of the deliberate homicide of Lauren DeWise, as well as the attempted homicide of Ashley Van Hemert, who miraculously survived, though she was left with permanent physical damage. For his cold, calculated, and utterly ruthless crimes, Paul DeWise was handed a staggering sentence, 220 years in a Montana state prison. He spent all that time recording his life just to try and prove he was the victim, but in the end, he literally just filmed his own life sentence.
We've definitely covered a lot of truly dark ground in this explainer today. But before we wrap things up, I want to pass a question directly over to you. What do you think is the most chilling piece of recorded evidence in this entire case? Was it those accidental audio threats, the matching boot prints caught on the vlog, or maybe those terrifying obsessive text messages? It is just a haunting irony that a man so incredibly desperate to control and direct the narrative of his own life wound up providing the exact evidence the state needed to lock him away forever. Think about that for a bit and let me know your thoughts. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the reality behind the lens.